is putting together a Martin Luther King week, not just a day looking at his life, but they're looking at his life and how he used scripture to advance the civil rights cause. Every day this week, starting at they host the video. Sorry, the door's kind of distracting me. They host the video at like 8 p.m. every night. And so we're going to take a look at the video that they posted last night. And so tomorrow we'll spend a little bit of time at the beginning of class taking a look at the video that they posted tonight. And so we'll just be a day behind. Today we're going to spend, whether we have our quiz today or have it tomorrow, is dependent on y'all's participation of this. Okay. So also the Cornell notes, I realized that I did not post them, post the assignment for you to turn it in, the place for you to turn it in. So that's posted now with the due date. I'm giving you all an extra day. So it's due Wednesday night. Okay. Cool.
Well,
Cool.
First part.
What we're about to do, we're going to take a look at a portion of Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, and kind of look at what that means and what that means for us. Is right now in America a pretty turbulent time? Yeah, it is. It is. Was when Dr. King gave this speech, was that also a pretty turbulent time in America? Yeah. So I think there are some lessons that we can take by looking at the words that he chose and examining what he did. So if you open up your Chromebooks, yeah, everybody get their Chromebooks out. Okay, John, I see the 3 fingers on your left hand. All right, go to Google Classroom. Yes, Nehemiah, right as of right now it is. Ashley and Edie will be joining us shortly. IPC Zoom, which, yeah. Okay. So you'll see that there is a posting of Dr. King's speech, the "I Have a Dream" speech, right? Christian, do you see that?
No. Yes.
Huh? Your what? Yes, that speech. Go ahead and get that speech pulled up. Okay. Now I posted that speech there so you could follow along with the person reading a portion of it. She starts off from the very beginning, so you don't have to kind of look through. And the reason I posted it there is because the speaker here is a little bit hard to hear. So, yeah, all right, because our speakers from that projectors aren't the strongest. Okay, cool. Everyone ready? Harmony, could you hit the lights? Yeah, it's I just posted it in the announcements. Yes. Okay, Christian, does that have anything to do with what we're talking about? Okay. So we're not going to watch the entire thing because the entire thing is 118 minutes. Or sorry, not 118 minutes. 1 hour and 18 minutes.
Wait, is this like a school?
Huh? No, it's not a school. It's a nonprofit that is dedicating they're taking a week to examine MLK's speeches and the relationship with Christianity. Okay. Because what was Dr. King? prior to becoming a civil rights leader. He was what? He was a pastor, not necessarily a priest. Typically, we hear priest in terms of, more along the lines of a Catholic type denomination. Protestant denominations tend to have pastors, reverends. It's just that it's a very they're similar. They're not necessarily the same. Okay. So this one was titled "Breaking the Yoke of Injustice," in which they examined this portion of the speech alongside Isaiah. Which Isaiah is it? See if I still have it pulled up. Yes, Isaiah 58:6. Okay, which is it not this the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke.
Thank you, Ava. And welcome everyone to this special week of honoring, reflecting on, and learning from the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
I'm your host, Ed Gilbreth, and it's an honor to be with you tonight. In my career journey, I've had the privilege of writing articles, books, and much content that highlights the importance of Dr. King's life and ministry to the church today. And I can honestly say, on this King Day, 2021, we need to hear and act upon his message of faith, peacemaking, and justice like no other time before. During an inauguration week that at times feels a little like a prelude to a new civil war, we need to hear from God. In the pandemic and a nation being torn asunder by partisanship, polarization, and nationalistic impulses that are antithetical to the gospel, I believe the church is being called to the higher values of the beloved community that Dr. King told us about. And I'm confident that God has a word for us this evening and this week, a word for all that ails us as a nation and all that ails us as a church. We will hear from an incredible lineup of inspired sisters and brothers this week. They will help us celebrate, lament, and I believe grow. So thank you again for joining us. Tonight's focus will be on the theme, Breaking the Yoke of Injustice, which is based on the first section of I Have a Dream. The accompanying scripture is Isaiah 58, verses 6 through 10. We'll get to that soon. But we will begin with a reading of this portion of Dr. King's speech. Tonight's reader is Mia Maynard of Chicago.
I am happy to join with you today
Now follow
in
along.
what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American, in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself an exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, Black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice.
Thank you, Mia. And what a powerful way to begin with Dr. King's words. And now we have a special word from a guest, Christian hip hop recording artist, songwriter, music executive, actor, entrepreneur, author. He needs no introduction. He is Lecrae.
Have y'all heard of him?
This is Martin Luther King.
I typically don't listen to much music, so I have not. But I want to take a look at that speech. Oops, hit the wrong button. Okay. Okay. So what stands out to you from these first two paragraphs? Bella. Were you gonna say something else?
Yeah.
Okay. What stands out to y'all from the first two paragraphs? It's kind of the prelude and then the intro paragraph.
I remember talking about the
Okay. All right. Emancipation Proclamation is one of those big documents that actually doesn't do as much as people tend to think it did, but it's still a big historic landmark document. So that's still why we pay reverence to it. All right. It's the 13th Amendment that ends slavery everywhere.
Are we counting the I'm happy to join you as a paragraph?
Yes. So these first two. Edie, Ashley, hello. So real quick, y'all will find this document in your Google Classroom page. And so we just listened to someone who read a part of it, and now we're looking at the words. Okay. What sticks out to you? Yes, Harmony.
Where after it says about the proclamation, it describes the hope of the millions of Negro slaves who were given the right to live in injustice.
Uh-huh.
How do you describe that?
Yeah, came as a hope, like Emancipation Proclamation, end of slavery. If you had been enslaved and then you saw that it ended, what would be your expectations?
Freedom. Yeah.
Freedom and equality, right? We'll get to that last point later. Okay. What about the first sentence here, or the first sentence of the second paragraph? 5 years ago. Where else have you heard that language before?
From Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln. Okay. Gettysburg Address. So Gettysburg is a battle in the Civil War in which about 50,000 American, about 23,000 Union soldiers and 28,000 Confederate soldiers died in a single battle. 50,000. You know how many people died overall in the Civil War, American Civil War? Around 600,000. 600,000. Yeah, 600,000 people died in the American Civil War. Okay. But Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address says 7 years ago, right? What's a score? What do you think a score is?
20 years.
It is 20 years. So 4 is how many years?
80.
80. So when Abraham Lincoln said it, 7 years, he was saying, huh? 7, 87 years ago. Okay. Here, Dr. King is going 5, thus 100 years. 5 times 20, 100. Okay. So this is the speech that he gave at the Capitol building, in front of the kind of reflecting pool where in the area near the Washington Monument and in between the Washington Monument and the Capitol. Okay. So here in this sentence, momentous decree, as Harmony said, great hope. What was this hope met with? Was this hope long lasting? What do y'all know? What happened? What came after Civil War? Well, there was Reconstruction, but after Reconstruction, what happened? What was life like in the South? What were these racist policies called? Jim Crow. Jim Crow. So it was one of those things we promised, and Dr. King talks about this promise, and we haven't lived up to it. Okay, one thing I want you all to keep in mind, I had a student come in this morning, and she just wanted to talk, and essentially she said, you know, she's pretty disgusted with America right now, right? Is today right now kind of a turbulent time period? Yeah, as the intro guy said, you know, it's inauguration week, and sometimes we feel like we're on the verge of a second Civil War, which we should be praying that doesn't happen. If 600,000 people died in the first Civil War in the 1860 to 1865, then no, right? But let's kind of keep on going here. What about in this third paragraph? Anything stands out?
Every time it says 100 years ago, later, 100 years later.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Christian?
Every time it would say something, I know that certain years then, I would say after that, they would still anything.
Okay. Do you agree with that? Has the promise been fulfilled? Harmony? You had your hand up.
I was just saying, it says the 100 years ago, the Negroes are still not free.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at the second sentence in the third paragraph. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. What do you think that means?
It's relating it back to like slavery.
Okay.
The manacles and chains, they were I forgot what it's called, but on the boats, they were chained together.
The slave ships, the middle passage. Mhm.
Yeah, so they're so discrimination.
Yeah. And even though slavery has been abolished, does that mean that they've been granted the access of freedom? Or sorry, not of freedom, of equality? No, no. And so they're still being held back by this, right? And so Dr. King is speaking to that. What about this fourth sentence here? Or sorry, fourth paragraph. Anything sticks out to you from there? What?
Yeah, this paragraph sticks out.
Okay, we'll get there. Denia.
The last one.
Okay. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What sticks out to you about that sentence?
That sounds like,
Pretty familiar?
yeah, that sounds like something I've heard.
Uh-huh. Well, harmony, and then
The pursuit of happiness, doesn't that come from? Doesn't it look like a jet?
a what?
Doesn't it start with his name start with a J?
Depends on which name you're talking about. Yes,
Isn't that the U.S. Constitution or document?
not the Constitution,
Yeah. What it's called.
the Declaration.
Oh.
Okay, so when Dr. King is talking about a promise that has been like the original promise of America, of the United States, he's referring to the ideas and the ideals that were held in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, right? At least the preamble of the Constitution. Okay, so now there may be some words in this paragraph that you have no idea what they mean. Raise your hand if that sounds true. Like some words in here that you're not familiar with. Tell you, there was a couple words in here that I was not familiar with until taking commercial law in law school. Okay. So one is this word here, promissory note. How many of y'all have heard of that word, that phrase before? Promissory note. Kenneth, do you know what it means?
No.
All right. Yeah. So to understand what that means and to give this passage context, we have to kind of go old school and talk about checks.
Oh, isn't that like the
How many of y'all have seen your parents write a check? Okay. I don't think I have written a check in the last 10 years.
Oh.
Anybody know why?
Because we don't.
You use your phone.
There are new ways to transfer money, to pay for things. No longer do people have to write checks.
Don't you have to write a check for the school?
You can pay for that on credit card or through a wire transfer, electronic transfer. All right. Yeah. So like checks are kind of going the bye-bye route. Right. So what is a check though?
A check
Yes, Christian.
where you write a certain amount of money on.
Yes, but what is it?
It's
Bella.
It's a ticket so that you can go and get money from another person's bill.
Okay, so what is it?
Verify.
What do you mean by what is it?
I mean, what does it represent? Edie,
Money. It's like,
wait, Edie.
Eden.
So a check is a small document in which one person like writes or they write a certain amount of money onto a check to deposit into someone else's account or into for them to have from the person or even a company. Sometimes companies write checks to
Okay. So
or
so
other companies.
so what does it
paying them-
represent? What? A promise. That's what I was getting at. It's a promise. A promise that you are going to pay, right? If I were to write a check to Bella, okay, then I'm promising Bella, she has the check. Does she have the cash? No. But she can get that cash by taking it to my bank and saying, I would like to cash this check. Okay, so it's a promise. And at that point, the money comes out of my account and she gets it. Okay, it's a promise to pay. So here, Dr. King is saying, in a sense, in a way, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check, to take part of this promise that was made to us from the very beginning. So let's take a look at that promise. That and no. No one's in a manger right now. Okay. So this first promise that he's referring to comes from here. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. At the time of this, that this was written, was this true for America? Did America live up to this promise?
No.
No. What was that, Christian? Huh? Okay. America did not live up to this promise. Why?
They were ignorant, they were.
Wait, there was slavery. Okay, but I don't want to be so dismissive of what's the root of all evil?
Money.
Not just money, it's the
Pursuit of happiness. The wanting of money.
what's the sign? Not with this. What is this in sign language? Anybody?
I don't know.
Love.
That's love?
I love you. That's what that means.
Like, that looks like rock. That looks like rock on you.
What they're really saying is, I love your music. No, that's not real. That's really not. No. Okay. No, so the love of money is the root of all evil. Okay. If you think about why there was slavery in our past and why it was so hard to get rid of, money. And that's the and that love of money then justified those feelings of ignorance and greed and white supremacy. But it was the love of money that was the start of it. Okay. So we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. What does unalienable mean? Okay. It is,
Not human.
okay,
That's what he just
okay.
said.
It essentially means that these are rights that cannot be denied. Okay, they cannot be denied. It's one of those words where if you just look at the different parts of the word and try to put it together, it doesn't match up with the definition, the usage definition. Okay, these rights cannot be denied. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, so we said from the beginning, July 4th, 1776, that we believe that all men are created equal and that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's one of the basic promises. The other one, coming from the preamble of the Constitution, okay, talks about, come on, zoom in. Ooh, too much. Talks about what America, what our idea is, our ideals are. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. Does that mean that we think that our union is perfect?
No.
No. We recognize it not to be. But the ideal is a more perfect union. That's why I say when I was talking with this student who was very discouraged about America right now, that she may be discouraged with America, but she should not give up on the American ideas, right? It's the American ideas that make us special. Every single country in the world has demons. Slavery is one of our demons. Or the history of slavery and the history of how we've treated minorities in the past is one of our demons. But you cannot go to a country that does not have demons. Name one, and I'll tell you their demons. Peru? Okay, first off, Peru. Spanish conquered Peru. How do you think they treated the native Incans? Poorly. Australia. That's an easy way. British colony. So when the British colonized Australia, you had the Aborigines, the native people of Australia. They took land from. They tried to whitewash. By that I mean they tried to strip the Aborigine children away from their culture and make them more British. And then Australia was a debtor's colony. So even among the Caucasian people living in Australia, there was a sense of inequality between the British and the Irish. So the British didn't treat the Irish very well as everything else. Harmony. I don't know what that one is. So
That is a small country.
okay,
Hawaii.
that's not a country, but it's okay. We also, I mean, Hawaii belonged to natives.
I thought Hawaii was in.
It's the U.S. It belonged to natives. Okay. A lot of people in the past 2 classes that we've talked about this, Canada has come up.
Oh, yeah. Canada is very dramatic.
Is what?
Very dramatic.
What does that mean? Dematic?
They got a lot of.
Oh, gotcha. Not demonic.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Okay. Okay. They do have their demons as well. Canada has not treated their native population well, just like us. And anyone know who their current prime minister is?
That white guy?
Well, it's Canada, so that's easy.
Okay, what's the white guy with the brown hair?
Also, narrowing it down,
Great guess. Justin Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau. Okay. Justin Trudeau has done something in his past that would have ended his career if he was an American politician. In the 2000s, like early 2000s, Justin Trudeau went to a Halloween party in blackface. No, I'm not. Okay, and the thing is, guys, in Canada, yes, thank you for Googling that, Harmony. In Canada, it was not as big of a deal as it would have been here because the population in Canada is there aren't that many Black people in Canada to make it a big political issue. And so he actually kept his job for it. So yeah, right. But I bring this up because every nation has demons.
That's crazy.
Okay.
If he was a black man, that would happen.
Well, wouldn't be in Canada.
He already black. Why would he be black?
I mean, well, that's a gross oversimplification, but and so it can be easy sometimes to look at what's going on in America and think, man, I just want to go somewhere else. Right? Every 4 years, we have half the population saying, if the other side wins, I'm moving too. Well, sometimes, yeah. So I've heard Canada a lot, which I'm like, okay. Depending on which side wants to move to Canada, that's yeah. But look at the total population of Canada as a whole.
6.2%.
Yeah. What's the U.S.? Yes. It means when a white individual paints their face to look like they were Black. And they tend to do that not in a flattering context. It's typically to make fun of something. Yes, Harmony.
I have the number. For 2019, the percentage will be 13.4%, which will be 41.62 million.
Yeah. They're wait, how many million?
41 and 9.
41 million?
41 million.
Okay.
Less than 22.
Population of Canada is about 35 million total. Total. Canada doesn't have that many people, like compared to the US, about a tenth our size. Okay. But, huh?
It's 37.
Possibly they don't get on each other. It's what?
37.
Okay, so they added 2 million since the last time I looked. Okay. You still have more African Americans living in this country than the entire population of Canada. So, right. But these are the promises here, and it's the idea that we're not perfect yet, but that's what we strive to be. Okay. And with every country having their demons, there's really not a place to escape to if you're not happy here. Okay. The big difference, what sets America apart is other countries have freedom. Okay. But it's our ideals and the goals that we hold ourselves to. We are if you look around the world, one of the things that's crazy about the US is how diverse we are. Okay. Most of the country, or sorry, not most of the country, most of the world's population lives in a mono-ethnic society. One ethnicity. One group of people. That's partly helped out because of China. I mean, that's a large population, right? But they live by themselves. And typically when you find mono-ethnic societies, you're going to find racism. It exists. China, Korea, Japan, they all have racism that exists. Oh yeah.
I know, I saw this
Oh, yeah.
I remember when this African American woman went to, not Korea, I think it was China. And she was like, people were taking pictures of her and everything.
Again, going from a mono-ethnic country, coming from a multi-ethnic country, which is what we are. Okay. So those were the promises, right? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all men are created equal. And this is the process, a more perfect union. We're not perfect yet. We're working toward that goal, even though, is that goal ever going to be attainable? No. Does that stop us from trying to get there? No. And what that also means is that we can change our country. Okay. So, which is what Dr. King is doing here. Okay. Signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. What does that word mean? Heir. John? To inherit. Okay. So every American is an heir of these rights and of this equality. And so that's what he's fighting for. Okay. That's what we're fighting for. Okay. What did you said in the fifth paragraph, there was something that stuck out to you?
Is that he used checks as justice,
Yeah.
similar to bank to justice.
Uh-huh. And so Dr. King here is also hopeful. And remember, this is a time where the police were sicking dogs on peaceful protesters. Why?
Didn't they do that?
Well, there's some similarities that you could, Denia, there are some similarities that you could bring up about the differences in different protests. But the water cannons were also used, that also happened recently against Native Americans in North Dakota. That's true. But despite all of that, Dr. King is still hopeful here. Because right here, instead of honoring the sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. That's when you don't have money or when you haven't fulfilled your check. So if I write a check to Bella and then I don't pay, that's a bad check. I tell the bank to cancel it, bad check. Okay. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So despite all of the negative energy that Dr. King was facing and that the civil rights movement was facing, he still had faith in the country that we could fix it. And that's kind of where we need to be now, right? What do you think the role of Christianity should be through this? Okay, tell people about Christ, sure. Is there an objective truth? Do we, as Christians, do we believe that truth is objective? That there are things that are true and things that are false, and we can tell the difference between the two? Yeah. Should we be speaking toward that objective truth? Yeah. You know, we've seen kind of recently the role that conspiracy theories and fake news has really, the danger that these things can do, right? I remember 4 years ago, the worst thing that we imagined, or the worst thing that happened was a guy shot up a pizzeria. Okay, because he believed, well, shot up, he fired at least one shot into the floor of the pizzeria because he believed that the Pizzagate, yes, because he believed a conspiracy theory that that pizzeria had a basement which was used for human trafficking. Problem is, the pizzeria didn't have a basement. Like there was no basement in the floor, but he believed it because he believed this conspiracy. He fell victim to this deception. Yes, which there were no children to save because there's no basement. Okay. But yeah, Facebook social media has really played a role in spreading out all of this false information. And it can spread extremely fast. And even after you've corrected it and said this is false, it is still out there, right? I've heard people say fact checkers are fake news. Fact checkers.
So trying to see the truth in your face. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. But we just need to be diligent in what we do, because think about these are still our brothers and sisters in Christ, right? Even though they may think things that we're like, still our brothers and sisters in Christ. We have to find a way to not necessarily, I mean, I don't know. You have to find a way to be speakers of that objective truth that is there. Okay. Anybody else have anything in here that they thought that stuck out to them? Harmony.
It's when it says, you used to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt.
Uh-huh.
What does it mean by that?
So what that means, what this sentence here means, but we refuse to believe the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. If a bank is bankrupt, you can't take any more money out. So Dr. King here is saying the Bank of Justice, the bank where we get justice from, we refuse to believe that is bankrupt, meaning we can't get justice out, right? We believe that it's still there, that we can get justice. We can get closer to that more perfect union. Yes, Edie, you have your hand up?
The sentence that stood out to me, the last one is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children, because it reminds me of one of the scriptures in the Old Testament. I think it's Joel specifically, or yes, I think it's either Joel or Amos, and it says to let justice roll on like a river, and righteousness like a never-ending stream. So it reminds me of how how justice is brought up in the Bible and how it's being emphasized in the speech.
Yeah. And as Christians, we should be on the side of justice. You know, one of the things that we often overlook when we talk about Martin Luther King is everyone tends to go back and think, oh, he was such a great guy, right? But at the time that he was living, he was vilified. People hated him. Huh? Yeah, MLK. People hated him when he was alive. That's why he got assassinated. People hated him because he was arguing to desegregate schools. Right? He was arguing that there should be an end between black water fountains and white water fountains, arguing that poll taxes, forcing black people to pay poll taxes shouldn't happen, that they should pay a tax, that they shouldn't have to pay a tax in order to vote, right? People hated him for that. Okay, he wasn't loved by all. He was seen as a radical. So we it helps us to remember that. Edie, yes.
One more thing. So the founding pastor church, Pastor Lawson, he knew Reverend Dr. King, and so he talked about how when he came to preach at the church, how he remembered so many people called him like a communist and, like you said, a radical. And even, and then as I had like got to know him more and more, he realized how humble Dr. King was, and how everyone, like so many people around him, were just spitting out insults and cruel things about him because of trying to do what was right. So he talked about that for our service for yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was upsetting the status quo, and people don't like it when you upset the status quo, even if you're seeking justice. Yes, Bella.
I read a book about there was this black girl going to an all white school,
Uh-huh.
and there was a crowd of people yelling at her.
Yep.
like that.
Yeah.
It was sad.
Yeah. Harmony.
I heard that when Martin Luther King got assassinated, when he was getting taken to the hospital and he was going to surgery, the doctors didn't do what they were supposed to. They kind of waited.
I have not heard that. I am not sure. I can't speak to that. Okay. All right, guys. Tomorrow we'll have our quiz. Okay, and don't forget your Cornell notes for 6-2 due tomorrow, because I forgot to post that over the weekend. See y'all. How what?